Hello everybody and welcome back. In these videos we are going to cover class communications in Unreal Engine 4. We will have a couple of steps to do to implement and develop this functionality for our multiple different types of classes to communicate and interact with each other effectively. We'll first start with an introduction to class communication and the performance that we can expect from utilizing interfaces to share common functionalities between different types of classes, which basically allows us to perform and customize functionalities across multiple different types of class objects. We will learn then how to implement the Unreal interfaces or the UInterfaces in C++. Next, we will move to learn how to expose the Unreal interfaces that we developed in native C++ code to blueprints so that level designers and artists who are utilizing and developing their own functionalities to employ these interfaces in Blueprint and use them in Blueprint. And finally, we will learn how to implement a simple interaction system that allows multiple types of objects in our project, in our game, such as the player and the magic pills, to react to a certain event happening in the level. So let's start learning about Unreal interfaces or UInterface objects and their implementation in Unreal Engine 4. As I said earlier, interfaces allow us to have different objects of different type to share a common functionality. Therefore, the shared functionality can be handled and implemented differently by different objects according to their needs. So we will learn how to perform this functionality. So interfaces, as we mentioned, are basically a pair of classes that work together to enable third-party classes to exhibit polymorphic behavior when you have multiple different types of class hierarchies that are using them. In order for us to be able to implement this functionality through the interfaces, we will first declare the interface classes, basically a UInterface class and an UInterface class, which is the implementation and interface class. Then once we have the implementation interface class declared, we will implement the base functionality of the interface class. And once we have that, we can then go ahead in our third-party UClass or UObject classes, which are the recipient classes of these interfaces. We will inherit these classes off of an interface class that we just implemented, and then we implement each functionality of these interfaces separately within their destination or the recipient UClass or UObjects. Okay, to start working with our interfaces, we first need to create a couple of classes that contain the functionality of our interface. So there are a couple of ways to do this. You could either go ahead directly in Visual Studio and just create the classes in your interface.h and then interface.cpp files and populate it, or as of the Unreal 4.15, you can create Unreal interface classes directly from the Unreal editor. So to create the Unreal classes, click on the Add New, just simply like a C++ class, and then Add New C++ class. And then from there, you scroll down all the way to the bottom of the page and choose the Unreal Interface class object to create. Then you press Next, and then you give it a name. So in this case, we're going to call this Unreal Interface My Interface. And then just simply like regular classes, we'll put it under the public folder, and so your header file will be added to the public section of your project, and then the source file will be added to the private section of your project. And then when you're done with it, you click Create Class, and it will create the class for you. It'll take a little bit for it to create the class, and then it pops open the Visual Studio for you. When Visual Studio opens up, you would notice that you would have the interface.h file created and then my interface.cpp file created. So let's take a look at the interface.h file. This is the header file of your interface. As I said, the interfaces basically are two classes, or a couple of classes here. And the Unreal Interface class, which your class UMyInterface is inherited from, is a UInterface class. And obviously, you will have your myInterface.generated.h, which is utilized by the Unreal header tools to populate the generated body of the interface classes. We won't do anything to this UInterface class, okay? And notice that the tag that we have here, the macro, is UInterface as opposed to a UClass, which was the case with general actors and objects. So that's the UInterface class. And then you have the UInterface class, which is the implementation of your interface. And so this is a simple class, a regular class. And again, it has the generated body and then a public section where you can add your interface functions, which we will do a little bit later in this video. If you go to the myInterface.cpp portion of your class, basically the Unreal basic scripting.h is added, which is your project API, and then myInterface.h, which is the header file of your interfaces. There is the function for the constructor of your UInterface class, or rather the UInterface class, and you don't make any changes to it. It basically populates and initializes your Unreal interface. And what we will do is we will add the UInterface functions that are not pure virtual in this section at the bottom here. Okay, so now that we have our interface header file and interface CPP file created, let's just go ahead and implement our interface. So first, we are going to go to the myInterface.h header file, and we are going to create a simple basic function, and we just basically call this function getTestName as our very basic implementation so far. So this function is going to be a virtual function, and it's going to be fstring getTestName. It's just a very simple functionality that we have for it so far. And then we are going to also comment this. So this sets up the interface functionality as just its basic feature or basic function, as its basic function. Then we are going to go to the implementation file of the interface, myInterface.cpp, and we are going to implement this function that we just created. So it's going to return an fstring as its output value, and inside of it we are going to say this function is unimplemented, and we are going to make it return an fstring. So this is my very basic implementation for the interface. It basically has a function that basically gets the name of the object, and it just returns an fstring as its native functionality. All right, now that we have our interface implemented, we can now go and add this interface into our third-party classes. So what I'm going to do is, as a first setup, I'm going to add this interface to my characters class. To do so, we are going to open up the Unreal Basic Character.h header file, and then right before the generated headers section, we are going to add the header file of the interface that we just created. So you do include myInterface.h. Then from here, we are going to make a multiple inheritance. The character directly is inherited from the A character class of Unreal, and we are going to basically also add a public parent to our character class, and this is going to be myInterface. So now a character is going to inherit both from the base character of the Unreal Engine and from the myInterface, but the implementation class of myInterface. And finally, we are going to override the declaration of the interface function that we want to utilize in our character. So simply go ahead and then somewhere under the public section, just add the fstring getTestName, which was the function from the interface, and we are going to override it and also comment it. Next, we are going to go to the Unreal Basic Character.c++ file, and from there, we are going to also implement this function. So it is going to be to return an fstring, and I'm going to create an fstring name that gets the name of my character, and then return the name. And this is all that we need to do to set up our character and implement its interface. Now with our interfaces implemented and added to our third-party object,